and I'm your moderator for today. It's a great pleasure and honor for me to be here with you today. I have some housekeeping announcements. Please turn off your mobile or switch them to silent mode for the peace of the forum and your minds. As you can see on the screen, the Korean language channel is #1 and English language channel is #2 on your receivers. This event is co-hosted by Korea Electric Power Corporation, KEPCO, and the World Bank. The forum is being held in a hybrid format of offline and online in accordance with the government's social distancing policy. Today's forum will cover the dynamics of energy transition and climate change. After the opening session, there will be two sessions, one on policy, another on technology. Without further ado, let us commence our opening session with opening remarks from Mr. Jason Olford, Special Representative of the World Bank Group Korea Office. Please welcome Mr. Jason Olford with a big round of applause.
안녕하세요. Welcome to the World Bank Energy Forum 2021. I'm excited to be here in Gwangju, the City of Light. First, I would like to thank Mr. Kyung-Yoon Lee, Vice President of KEPCO, Mr. Jae Tang, Practice Manager at the World Bank, and Hyung-Gun Wang, Program Manager of the Korea Green Growth Trust Fund, for agreeing to make remarks at this forum. My thanks also go to Mr. Jae-Kun Song, General Manager of KEPCO, and his team for co-organising this forum and extending warm hospitality to the World Bank team. As you know, a wide variety of innovations are happening globally to support decarbonisation of the power industry. The World Bank Group is helping developing countries to accelerate their transition to clean and sustainable energy systems through its clean energy operations. Supporting energy transition is a central agenda for the World Bank, embodied in the Bank's Climate Change Action Plan for 2021 through 2025. The Climate Change Action Plan is a recognition that if the World Bank Group is to deliver on its twin goals of reducing poverty and boosting shared prosperity, it must help countries to fully integrate climate and development objectives. Climate change is also a top priority for the Korean government. This is highlighted in the government's 2040 Energy Transition Roadmap and its net zero by 2050 vision. And of course, KEPCO is leading Korea's energy transition with its large investments in renewable energy and digitalisation. To learn more about energy transition in Korea's power system and to share the World Bank's energy transition projects with the audience, we've invited 9 speakers. Mr. Rao Kichlu from the World Bank, Professor Kyung Jin Bu from Seoul National University, Dr. Ki-Jong Park from KEPCO, Mr. Dong-Hoon Lee from Starkov, Dr. Chong Suk Song, also from the World Bank, Dr. Junu Shrestha from the World Bank, Professor Yong-Hoon Jung of Aju University, Mr. Sun-Ki Jung from TIDE, and Mr. Zaki Kori from the World Bank. I want to thank all the speakers for joining us today. This forum has been co-organised by the World Bank Group and KEPCO since 2017. We didn't hold the event last year because of the pandemic, so we're glad to be back this year. The World Bank Group's Korea office has been hosting webinars in partnership with KEPCO, including one last September on digitalisation in the post-COVID-19 era, the new normal in the power sector. The World Bank Group's Korea office is a global innovation and technology hub for sustainable development, with a particular focus on digital and green innovation. That's why we value our partnership with KEPCO in producing webinars and forums such as this one. The areas of focus for the World Bank Group's Korea office are also key priorities of the Korean New Deal, and hence there's great potential for us to continue to partner with Korean agencies and institutions. We use these partnerships to look for opportunities to help developing countries learn from Korean experiences and stay on a green and sustainable development track. Thank you again for participating in today's forum, and I look forward to the presentations and discussions. Kamsahamnida.
Thank you very much, Jason, for your excellent opening remarks. Next, we will hear welcome remarks from Mr. Kyung-Yoon Lee, Vice President of KEPCO. Please welcome Mr. Kyung-Yoon Lee with a big round of applause.
네, 반갑습니다. 저는 한국전력공사에서 에너지 신사업을 담당하고 있는 이경윤이라고 합니다. 오늘 뜻깊은 행사에 참석해 주신 미스터 제이슨 알퍼드 월드뱅크 한국 사무소장님, 미스터 지탕 월드뱅크 사무소 관계자님께 우선 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 월드뱅크 에너지 포럼에 오신 기분 여러분을 따뜻한 마음으로 먼저 환영합니다. 코로나19로 어려운 여건 속에서도 이번 행사를 준비해 주신 월드뱅크 또 항전 관계자 여러분께 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 월드뱅크 에너지 포럼 2017년부터 월드뱅크와 항전이 함께 개최를 해오고 있는 국제전력산업정보교류의 자리입니다. 올해는 에너지 산업과 기후변화 대응이라는 주제를 가지고 정책과 기술 두 개의 세션으로 나누어 답을 정책 세션에서는 월드뱅크의 에너지 산업과 기후변화 행동 프로그램에 관한 내용과 탄소 중립 달성을 위한
along with
Korea's
energy transition policy to achieve carbon neutrality. In the technical session,
AMI 등을 활용한
domestic and foreign best practices of energy transition using e-mobility, CCUS, and AMI will be shared. I hope all participants enjoy this great opportunity to explore inroads into overseas energy business and network and get acquainted with the World Bank. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen,
에너지 전환과
in
기후변화
response to
대응을 위한
energy transition and
탈탄소
climate
및
change,
에너지 효율
recently
화로의
the global power industry
패러다임 전환이
has been
가속화되고
accelerating
있습니다.
the paradigm
우리
shift
한전 또한
toward
이와 같은
decarbonization,
글로벌 변화에 대응하기 위해
as well as
해상
digitalization.
풍력 개발을 통한 친환경 재생에너지 확충,
To respond
전기차
to such
인프라
global
확충을 통한
changes and
수송 부분
challenges, KEPCO
전기화,
is also promoting various
제로
projects
에너지
such as
빌딩과
expansion of eco-friendly
스마트
renewable
산업단지
energy and the
조성을
development of
통한
offshore wind power,
에너지 효율화 등
electrification of the
다양한
transportation
사업을
sector through
추진하고
expansion
있습니다.
of public electric vehicle
이번
charging
빅스포를
infrastructure
통해
and energy
탄소
efficiency
중립을
through
향한
establishment
한전의
of new
실천
energy
방안을
buildings and smart
엿볼 수 있을
industrial
것으로
complexes. And this year's
생각합니다.
BIXPO will offer you a glimpse
빅스포
of
행사는
KEPCO's action plan
올해
towards carbon
7회째를 맞이하고
neutrality.
있습니다.
BIXPO is
그동안
celebrating its 7th
양과질
anniversary
모든
this year.
면에서 크게
During that
성장해서
time, it has grown
지난해는
significantly in both
36개국
quantity and quality.
228개 기업이
With
참여하였고
228
올해는
companies
더욱
from
늘어난
36 countries participating in the previous event,
248개 기업이
and now
참가하였습니다.
248 companies from 49
한전은
countries
빅스포가
taking part
세계적인
this year.
전력산업 박람회로
KEPCO will
발돋움할 수
make
있도록
continuous efforts to
지속적으로 노력할
transform
것입니다.
BIXPO into a world-class
월드뱅크
power
에너지
industry
포럼
exposition.
역시
The World
빅스포
Bank
행사의
Energy
메인
Forum
이벤트로
is a main event
전력
of
산업 분야의
BIXPO,
다양한
and we
주제가
believe that it
지속적으로
will
논의될
be a
수 있는
beneficial convention
유익한 자리가 될
to
것으로 믿고
continuously
있습니다.
discuss various topics in the electric
예술가
power
빛의 거울
business.
광주 광역시에서 열리는
Through the
월드뱅크 에너지
World Bank
포럼을
Energy
통해
Forum held in Gwangju,
전력
the city
산업의
of
최신
Art and
트렌드와
Light,
미래의
please
거대한
take the
변화를
opportunity to
미리
grasp
알아볼
the
수 있는
latest trends in the
기회를
electric power
가져보시기
industry and get a
바랍니다.
preview into the huge
다시
changes
한번 이렇게
that the
뜻깊은
electric power industry
환영의
will
기회를
bring with its
주신
development in the
관계자
future.
여러분께
Once again, I would like to
감사드리며
thank you for giving me this
이곳에
wonderful
머무시는 동안
opportunity to deliver my
유익한
words of welcome, and I
시간과
hope that you have
소중한
a pleasant
추억을
stay and to
많이
take
만들어
back wonderful
가시기를 간절히
memories of
바라겠습니다.
Gwangju and the
감사합니다.
event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, for your warm welcome message. Next, we will invite Jie Tang, who's joining us online from Singapore, for his congratulatory remarks. He is a practice major at the World Bank Infrastructure, East Asia and Pacific Energy Unit. Please welcome Mr. Jie Tang with a big round of applause.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you, Ki-Yong Lee, Vice President of CAPCO. It's a great pleasure for me to attend for the second time the BIXPO World Bank Energy Forum. I would like to thank CAPCO for co-hosting this forum and all participants for joining us today. With COP26 just being held in Glasgow this week, it's very timely for us to discuss climate change and energy transition at this forum. More than 2/3 of the global greenhouse gas emissions come from the energy sector. Energy demand will continue to grow as countries are seeking post-COVID-19 pandemic recovery and economic growth. Reducing carbon footprint of the energy sector is one of the most critical development challenges of our time. It would need to overcome several underlying challenges. First, concern of energy security and reliability and affordability need to be satisfactorily addressed. Second, a just transition for all and protecting the livelihood of workers, communities, and business are essential for a smooth energy transition. Third, it would require a massive scale-up in renewable energy and energy efficiency. And fourth, continued technology innovations such as battery storage, green hydrogen, and the carbon capture, utilization, and storage will play a key role in decarbonization. Accelerating clean energy transition will require careful planning, significant change in economic policies and incentives, technology innovation, and the mobilization of large amounts of financing. I think the world is witnessing the energy transition. Korea is seen as a hub of technology development and innovation, and the CAPCO has been seen as a very strong utility in the East Asia and Pacific region and can lead in some of the many of the knowledges and experience in the energy sector. It is very encouraging to see that Korean government created the position of Energy Vice Minister of Energy Transition in this August as part of the action plan under the Net Zero 2050 vision. The World Bank is also on the same page with Korea in its effort for climate change and energy transition. We provide the comprehensive support to countries for energy transition. Our energy program focuses on reducing coal dependence, scaling up clean energy, ensuring a just transition, and improving sector governance for better efficiency. We have delivered over $83 billion in climate financing from 2016 to 2020. We also support countries to de-risk the investment and channel international commercial financings towards energy transition. Today's forum is as evidence of the strong partnership between the World Bank and the CAPCO. It will provide an excellent opportunity for all to benefit from the knowledge and the experience of national and international leaders and experts. We very much look forward to the continued great partnership between the World Bank and the CAPCO, and we wish you a very successful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for your inspirational remarks. Now, we will move on to our first session on policy. Please remember that we will take questions after hearing two presentations. So please keep your questions until Q&A session. The first speaker is Mr. Raul Kichlu, who's connected online from Hanoi. He is a lead energy specialist and a program leader of infrastructure of the World Bank. He will highlight some of the World Bank's activities on energy transition, especially in East Asia and Pacific. Rahul, you have 15 minutes.
Thank you, Inchul, and our colleagues from the government of Korea, Mr. Lee from KEPCO, Jason and the World Bank colleagues. all distinguished guests and participants. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. I'm going to speak about clean energy transition in the East Asia and Pacific region, and particularly focusing on the World Bank's engagement on these issues. The presentation is in 4 different sections. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about the context and the outlook of the energy sector, particularly with the eye on climate change and development, very key issues that Jason was highlighting. Second, we'll talk about power sector, and particularly the use of coal in the power sector and how those interactions are both relevant for climate and development. Third, we'll talk about World Bank's global climate change action plan. And then finally, what that translates into World Bank's energy sector programs itself, particularly in the East Asia region, and how we anticipate our engagement in the main focus countries. So to begin with, this is a bit of a sobering message to deliver, that we are very keenly aware that climate change poses not only a global risk, but it is a particular concern in the East Asia and Pacific region, where much of the population lives around the coastline and is very vulnerable to the sea level rise that can be caused due to global climate change and temperature increases. At the same time, we also see that high rate of urbanization in the East Asia Pacific region is another risk factor, with increases in extreme weather events that can impact populations, that can impact growth in this region quite severely. We've seen already some warning signs of this that continuously are reported, where some of the upland areas in East Asia and Pacific already are seeing land scarcity, water scarcity, and other stresses on the environment, which are creating challenges to both shared prosperity and poverty reduction. This context is very important to keep in mind, that adaptation from climate change and resilience is a very major concern in East Asia Pacific region. And yet, if you see on the flip side, it is a region which also is contributing to one of the fastest increases of greenhouse gas emissions around the world. We have seen in 2019, 2020, that about 56% of global CO2 emissions were coming from Asia. 34% of it were coming from non-OECD countries in the East Asia Pacific itself. And specifically, there are 4 or 5 major developing economies in East Asia that are significant contributors to emissions. And if you again look why that has been the trend in the past decade or so, it really relies a lot on the use of coal in the power sector. You've seen the coal usage in East Asia Pacific over the last 20 years has increased by 150%. And this, together with the growth and development objectives that the governments are pursuing, is creating a risk not only globally, but very much locally within the East Asia and Pacific region. And I mentioned this, that if you look further into East Asia Pacific region, there are really 4 major economies: China, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Philippines, that are consuming about 98% of coal within the region. And the trends in these economies is that coal being consumed, about 2/3 of that, roughly 60%, is trending towards being utilized in the power sector. So all this to say that the use of coal in the power sector is really the critical issue for global climate action, and we really need to recognize that that provides both a challenge and an opportunity for us collectively in the energy sector. At the same time, the governments in all of these countries have been making strong commitments commitments and actions to reduce the reliance on coal and overall reduce the emissions in the economies. We've seen various different commitments, China committing to net neutrality by 2060 and peaking emissions well before 2030. Some of this data will already be updated post COP26 with new commitments coming in. For example, Vietnam committed to net carbon neutrality in the economy by 2050. Philippines announcing a moratorium on new coal power plants. So things are certainly being prioritized as policy actions to reduce the reliance of coal in the power sector. But at the same time, it is also to be recognized that this is not going to be an easy challenge to reduce the reliance on coal and create a sustainable and feasible energy transition. And I wanted to just spend a few moments on describing why that is the case, which our practitioners in the power sector understand quite well, but just to kind of focus on why, how the governments and authorities making decisions review these challenges. There are several factors, and just to mention a few, it is about balancing the trade-offs that the authorities are facing. The trade-offs between demand growth and energy security, how to overcome the technical challenges for phasing out coal and accelerating, what impact does it have on finances of the sector, and broader economic impacts to trade and growth of what are some of the political economy and public awareness issues that authorities need to balance with. So just to mention a few of them and how they play out. First, in the East Asia Pacific region, it is recognized that this will be the growth engine of the global economy. And at the same time, how that translates into the power sector is that the demand for electricity will be growing on average between 6 to 8% in the developing parts of East Asia, which far outpaces the demand growth in OECD countries, which average at about 1.5%. And this is mainly due to increasing incomes, electrification of everything, mobility, digitalization of the economies that are creating new and new demands on the power sector. At the same time, there is a big focus on energy efficiency, demand moderation, and tariff reforms. But in the end, we still see the growth rates are going to far exceed what we see as the global norm. So how do we satisfy this growing energy demand and do it in a sustainable way, which also contributes to the climate goals of the country and the nationally determined contributions? Then the second set of challenges are around technical and operational aspects. So it's not simple enough to say that we can phase out coal overnight and it will be replaced by renewable energy. There are various technical challenges. First, typically baseload coal-based supply is a 24-hour solution. With renewables, you have to figure out how to provide those energy security solutions for 24 hours, adding energy storage, adding baseload power when renewable energy is not available, but also very importantly think about integration of fluctuating renewables to the grid. What are some of the options there? Well, certainly energy storage systems play a very important role, but to really scale to the levels required to fully replace coal, they are still being pushly developed, and viability is going to really come into prime time in the coming decades. That's the hope based on cost reduction projections that are being presented. At the same time, other technologies that are available now, like natural gas, can play a role in this transition, which provide not only baseload power, but also via integration capabilities. These are very important topics to consider, because if we don't scale up renewable energy as well as the technologies that allow for integration, then there is a risk for fallback options again continue being on fossil fuels. We've seen the last couple of years in Vietnam, about 17 gigawatts of solar capacity has been added, quite successful in scaling the renewables, but at the same time, because these integration issues, because the grid expansion not take place at the same speed, massive curtailment of the reliance on fossil fuels as well. The other factor here is that in addition to the technological challenge, we see other solutions coming up, like hydrogen, like carbon capture. But today, the reality is that the total system cost of a renewable energy-based system is still higher than the total system cost of fossil fuels-based systems in many of our client countries. So how can we support the government mobilizing the financing required for this transition to become a critical issue? And not only is it a question of finance, it's a broader economic implication of the transition that also needs to be considered. What are the costs and benefits beyond the power sector? Can they be factored into system planning and modeling scenarios to make decisions based on the entire economy? For example, are there environmental damages and cost of carbon that is factored in power system decision making? Are there new opportunities like greening of the exports that can benefit from clean energy transition? What are the opportunities for new investments in job creation? Some of the estimates that our colleagues at IFC and the World Bank have done states this opportunity to be in the trillions of dollars, and job creation estimates in hundreds of billions of So capturing this broader implication of the power sector to the economy itself, and what are the winners and the losers in this transition. Of course, there are some local and international political economy issues to consider. What happens to coal exporting nations? What happens to the industries and people that are involved in the coal industry today, and how the phase out would impact them? What kind of protections can be provided by governments? Just transition is absolutely critical. And at the same time, responding to of growing middle class consciousness in economies asking for cleaner air, cleaner and more sustainable cities that they live. So what's the World Bank doing about it, and what is our perspective on climate action? The first thing we recognize is that there is no solution to global climate change without the leadership of the APP stages. It's absolutely critical that because it is such an important growth engine in the world, that the solutions demonstrated in East Asia at scale will be critical for decarbonizing the global power sector and the economy. And our commitments under the Climate Change Action Plan are the follows. First, the World Bank will align all of its operations, all of its projects with the Paris Agreement within the next 18 months, by 2023. And the focus will be not just on financing green projects, but really greening the entire economy. That's sort of the direction that we are working not just in the energy sector, but coordinating across with other sectors in our programs in support of the government's visions for decarbonizing the economy. Specifically, the Climate Change Action commits 35% of all of our financing will go towards climate action. And this is across all of the regions of the world, across all of the sectors that we engage in. Of course, we anticipate that with the energy sector, this figure will be much higher. And this is already an increase from our previous commitment to the first Climate Change Action Plan between 2016-2020, which was at about 28% of our total financing, which amounted to 83 billion, as was mentioned by Tang, of climate financing. 83 billion of our own financing, which if you add to this co-financing from government sources, private sources, and leveraging impact of these investments, it is a much larger figure. We're also preparing country climate and development board, which is a detailed, comprehensive analytical basis, which really advises the governments on what are the feasible low-carbon pathways to take for decarbonizing the power sector. And finally, we are providing comprehensive support to our client countries for a holistic clean energy transition framework. And this is quite important because isolated individual interventions will not produce the type of results we hope to achieve. This needs to be really across the supply network and demand network of our sector. COVID provides, the pandemic provides also an opportunity within this context as the countries and economies are looking for growth and restarting the economy and the growth again. It's important that this new phase of growth is green and resilient and it's inclusive based on the principles that we've been discussing so far. So within the climate change action plan, there are 4 areas of focus: low carbon energy, which also includes focus on industrial development and transport sector, mobility as the big consumers of the energy within these economies, as well as more adaptation and resilience related topics around ecosystem, forestry, natural resource preservation, sustainable cities and communities, as well as the final pillar there, which is really about mobilizing financing for extensive transition, whether it's the energy sector or transport sector. Within the first transition, our focus is very much, as mentioned, around renewable energy and efficiency, slowing down and eventually reversing the growth of coal, and scaling up mobility solutions, accelerating decarbonization of industries, as well as enhancing resilience of the core infrastructure that provides citizens with the enabling services for growth. Finally, let me mention about our own approach to clean energy transition in the region and how the bank is supporting the countries developing this vision. Our engagement is again focusing on 4 pillars of action. And the first is around policies and regulations to reduce coal production and consumption. It is very important to engage on holistic power system planning, reforms of the subsidy, and the pricing regime, looking at how system dispatch takes place in terms of prioritizing renewable energy over other fossil fuel sources, and how the entire institutional landscape is working on roles and responsibilities and decision-making on this clean energy transition priorities. At the same time, I mentioned scaling up clean energy and energy efficiency is the heart of transition, but not just on the renewable scale, but also on complementary investments in grid network upgrades, digitalization, all of those integration and flexibility technologies, including important considerations, natural gas, regional interconnection that provide the flexibility of the system in developing low carbon, low cost assets optimized over a larger regional perspective rather than a national perspective. Supporting decarbonization, the industrial and transport sectors is absolutely critical, where there are lots of synergies between the energy decarbonization and the transport decarbonization, for example, electric mobility. And then looking at just transition to make sure that this phase out from fossil fuel industries does not negatively impact citizens engaged in these. I'm not going to go through the final slides, just to mention that within each of our 4 big coal-consuming countries, China, Indonesia, Vietnam, similar approach with the 4 buckets of focus area activity continues, and there are a lot of engagements that our teams working on the ground with our counterparts in these countries are looking at developing a sustainable and holistic clean energy transition programs. And as you engage with our counterparts and colleagues on the ground in these countries, they can go deeper and describe more of the opportunities specific to each of the countries. Finally, I will close by saying that this transition really requires mobilization of support across not just the World Bank, Government of Korea, but various different partners. We work very closely with the Energy Transition Council as part of COP26. ASEAN platform, of course, there is collaboration with our technical assistance and financing partners, such as the SNAP program, Powering Us, Polar Alliance, Energy Transition Partnership, and very importantly, which brings us together today is the World Bank Korea Partnership, which is a fantastic platform for sharing knowledge, exchanging ideas, and really coordinating development of technical assistance and eventually financing for energy transition. Thank you very much, and back to you.
Thank you, Rahul, for your rich presentation. Please stay connected for Q&A session. The second speaker, Professor Kyung-Jin from Seoul National University, will delineate Korea's plan to achieve energy transition and carbon neutrality. Professor Bu, we are being delayed a little bit, so if you can complete your presentation within 15 minutes, it will be appreciated. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kyung-Jin from Seoul National University. This morning, I'm going to talk about energy transition as a way to Korea's carbon neutrality. And the previous presenter talked about these topics based on for the ASEAN East Asia countries. Mine is focused on Korea. Okay, my talking is probably based on this structure. The first, energy transition and carbon neutrality, and renewable energy 3020. And third, the fifth, basic plan for new and renewable energies. This one is the most important part. And fourth, hydrogen economy roadmap. I think this one is probably covered by the Dr. Jung Yong-won later. So I maybe skip this one. And lastly, I will talk about COVID-19 and Green New Deal in Korean case. But this one is also covered by the previous presenters, so probably maybe not skipping, but a little bit shorten this part. Carbon neutral global trend. You all know this 2050 carbon neutral as emerging as a global trend, and starting with the Paris Agreement and UN Climate Action Summit. In there, they established climate ambition alliances, and they established also a global agenda for 2050 carbon neutral. And recently, we are experiencing the COVID-19, and this intensify seriousness of climate change. And every country is getting together and talk about maybe more reduction in GHG emissions. Okay? And this is a global trend for carbon neutral, and this one maybe bring about the new economic order and emergence of a new market. In terms of the new economic order, this strengthens the global regulatory business activities like WTO, IMF, and BIS, and United States. Carbon border tax, we heard about this one. And private sector is also renewable energy 100, and ESG, environment, social, and governance. It's very popular in Korea too. And new market, eco-friendly market is growing. And investment expansion by major economies to maybe predominate the emerging market in Korea too. And eco-friendly energy is like such as renewable energy, hydrogen fuel cells, as secondary battery. And investment is in the major economies announcement to large green investments in the future. So maybe I cannot get into detail this table graphs, how the Korean government is implementing the strategy of carbon neutral. The vision, catchphrase like from adaptive reduction to a proactive response. Very nice catchphrase. To achieve carbon neutral and economic growth and improved quality of life. So policy issues like adaptation, opportunity, fairness. Under that, the first adaptation, decarbonizing economy and creating ecosystem of a promising low carbon industry. And fairness is very important, like ESG, fair transition to carbon neutral society among stakeholders. And under that we have 10 tasks, and I cannot get into detail. And also we need some institutional arrangements. We need the money, fiscal policy, and great finance and R&D, and we need international cooperation. Okay, and we need some organizations such as 2050 Carbon Neutral Committee, and also the operational approach, mobilizing national consensus and strategic prioritization of these major issues. So step-by-step performance definition of this carbon neutral. So this shows that the vision of a carbon neutral strategy. So the left side is in the past, the coupling of emissions, GHG emissions, and GDP growth. But in the future, to be is like decoupling of carbon emissions and economic growth. So let me talk about sector by sector, the current state and the future states, and what is the expected outcomes. In the energy sector, fossil fuel-based energy production should be getting out. And in the future, we have to transition into eco-friendly energy production, renewable energy, and other CCUS. And expected outcome is like electricity system transformed into eco-friendly clean energy systems. And in the industry, in the past, so far, carbon-intensive industrial structures, but this one should be transformed into new promising industry and low-carbon industry. And what is expected outcome is adaptation to global environmental regulations and strengthen the industrial competitiveness. So under that, we have programs and announcement by governments, an innovative strategy, energy carbon neutral, and great transition of a carbon neutral industry. And how about the transportation sector? Current state is internal combustion engine-centered transportation system should be transformed into the eco-friendly vehicle-oriented ecology, like EVs and hydrogen fuel cell cars. And in this, an expected outcome, enhanced competition of eco-friendly future cars competing together. Okay? And win-win system is established, ecological, some kind of system will be settled down. And in building sectors, from energy-intensive buildings into green buildings of energy, self-sufficiency. Expected outcome is zero energy building become common in the future. So we have also the government announcements of programs and the plans and basic plans in relation to these issues. And let me talk about renewable energy, very important approach by Korean government, RE 3020. The background is like, you know all this one, Paris agreements and shale gas revolutions in the United States and earthquake in the southeast region, and microdust syndromes. Everybody is experiencing this kind of phenomena. And government policies are going to declare the energy transition policy along with the denuclearizations, decoalizations. So basically, the government approach is to address safety, sustainability, and natural consensus. This is a renewable energy 3020 targets. We have to install 63.8 gigawatts, and most of them, more than 95% share is wind power and solar PV systems. This is a detailed government approach how to attain this 3020 renewable energy plan. And in the bottom, we have a large-scale project, but we also rural farm solar PVs and government cooperative and small business and government supported with financial and also some incentives. Okay, but you see this fuel mix is 20%, but because of invariance of intermittency of renewable energy, the capacity should be bigger than 2 or 3 times that. So that takes a lot of money. How? Maybe we increase the RPS mandatory rate 28% by 2030, and large-scale projects, and we have to mobilize community participations and investment for grid stability, because the renewable energy is very unstable. We have to put lots of money into the stabilizing or bigger scale of grid stability, and efficient demand-side management is also needed, and R&D investment is $1.4 billion, lots of money. And another very important approach by the government is renewable energy basic plan. This is a 5th renewable energy basic plan. This background, maybe I can skip this one. And domestically, we have a long-term target and policy suggested in the RA 3020 and energy basic plan, okay? And hydrogen economy roadmaps we established, and Green New Deal and carbon neutral things, and getting together. And maybe we can promote renewable energy based on these programs. And this is a 5th new and renewable energy basic plan as a new approach. Until a 4th basic plans, more top-down approach, and the maybe other things is, but the 5th basic plan is more focused on reinforcements of grid systems in response to the variability due to the expansion of renewable energies, and voluntary demand expansions and compensated. And thirdly, inclusion of a hydrogen economy. Okay? So we have another addition. I talked about the carbon neutral and including these issues, and we have 4 approaches. I cannot get into detail because time limits. Anyway, the targets of a 5th new and renewable basic plan is 26%, almost 26% by 2034. And final energy, the share is 13.7%. And GHG emissions is almost 700 million CO2 emissions reduction. So we have this kind of some plan, okay? The catchphrase, the vision is accelerated transition to a low carbon social economy through building a efficient base of sustainable, new and renewable energies. So we like to live up to the major energy sources by 2030 through innovation of new and renewable energy, deploying market, demand, industry, and infrastructure. We have policy directions, 5 policy directions. I cannot get into detail, but later you can refer to this, the directions. So this one also is very important, but will be covered by the Dr. Yong-Hun Chung. So I will skip this one. But this one is very important. Vision, job creations, economic impact. Okay. Lastly, let me talk about the Korean New Deal. Recently, government announcement. So why? This is because declining growth rate of maybe economic growth rate is maybe letting down, and widening social polarizations between the rich and poor, and many polarization point we can have, and economic paradigm shift, okay? And we are experiencing, going through the COVID-19 pandemics and economic recession, like the previous presenter mentioned, and shock in the job market. And this graph, the upper one is the BAU cases, and we experience and COVID-19 and the economic getting down, and probably we recover, but not as high as the BAU case in the past. And if you try, maybe take more efforts, probably close to the previous BAU cases. So there's lots of structural change due to the COVID-19 and rising demand for untapped services. We have to transition towards a digital economy. And so there's some paradigm shift to a people-centered economy. Okay? There's innovative technology and everything, like a Zoom and Team program is coming in, when we can talk and communicate with online systems. Also, growing demand for low carbon and eco-friendly economy. Maybe shift towards a green economy, and climate change, COVID-19 is mutually dependent, but is exacerbating. And green economy improves quality of life and provide opportunity to create jobs and new opportunities. And we have to radically transform this economic and social structure with the restructuring of our labor markets. And because there's some deepening polarizations, okay? So we need some social safety network to getting together in the job market or economic to undo the polarization, social polarizations. So this shows that the overview of the Korean New Deal. Vision is from a fast follower to a first mover economy, and secondly, from a carbon dependent to a low carbon economy, and thirdly, from a socially divided into an inclusive society. We have policies 2-to-1. Two policies, one is a digital New Deal, another one is a Green New Deal. And in the bottom, we have stronger safety needs. So we need the money, the fiscal investment also, as well as the institutional arrangements. And we have projects. 10 projects is a digital New Deal and digital and green New Deal. Let me talk about the Green New Deal. Just we have 3 projects: green remodeling, and green energy, and eco-friendly mobility of the future. And we have in the bottom, total 28 projects: a digital New Deal, Green New Deal, and stronger safety nets. And total 28 projects we are implementing. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, please raise it, okay?
Thank you, Professor Wu. Please stay at the podium for Q&A session. Now we will have Q&A session. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any question, please raise your hand. Okay. Okay. Yeah, the lady in the front. Please tell us who you are and indicate to whom your question is addressed.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Susu. I'm from Myanmar. And now I'm a PhD student under the International Energy Policy Program from Seoul National University. My question is for the first presenter, Mr. Rahul. And firstly, I'd like to say thanks for sharing your knowledge with this comprehensive presentation, and we ever thanks to World Bank for your various kind of support to our country, especially for the power sector. My question is regarding the last part of your presentation. Yes, which is concerning with the new and your World Bank engagement for the clean energy transition. Under this part, you explained about your approaches focused on the 4 pillars, right? In the second pillars, you stated that for the renewable energy sector engagement, World Bank supports for the renewable energy investment via PPP frameworks and also for the auctions, competitive auctions. And so, according to my knowledge, for the RE, renewable energy sector development, research and development, R&D is one of the most important driving force. So, my question is why R&D for renewable energy sector is not included in this part? And is there any plan of the World Bank support for this R&D sector? Thank you so much.
Whenever I go abroad and talk with some government officials or businessmen in the international conference and workshops, especially the developing countries, and I recommend, because your capacity factor is so low, you have to have such training centers focusing on the R&D centers, and based on that one, you can raise your capacity and probably get into other areas of policy and other technology sector. So, first of all, the first thing you have to do is maybe you have to establish the R&D centers. Not only technology, but also the policy, economic feasibility studies. With that one, you can have good policy tools to be implemented for future sustainable energy systems. Maybe answer your question?
Thank you, Professor Pu. Rahul, you may respond to the question also. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question, colleague from Myanmar. A very important point you raise. I think certainly R&D and new technologies and really the commercialization of those technologies is going to be absolutely critical. This is not just for renewable energy, but even the complementary technologies, as I was mentioning, even mainstreaming hydrogen-based economy, carbon capture, utilization and storage, and battery technologies and other technologies of the future that we don't even have the imagination for at the moment. So I think you're very right that this is a critical area. Let me respond with 3 issues that the World Bank is supporting. First, our education sector programs very much look at providing support to countries on developing, as the professor was saying, an ecosystem of innovation. There are programs being supported which are not just on energy sector, but more holistically developing tertiary education, university education, research and development in labs, with a particular focus on digital economy, green economy, and what may be relevant. So those are programs supported by the education sector colleagues holistically developing those capabilities within the country, which is absolutely critical. After that is a second issue I would mention is part of our World Bank group is IFC, which is our private sector arm. And they are very much engaged in commercialization of early stage of these technologies. For instance, through venture capital and those kind of early stage investments, in trying to see whether some of these technologies can be market ready in terms of testing them out and piloting them. Third is the public sector arm of the World Bank also provides support to the governments in order to get over what we call, say, the hurdle rate, providing concessional financing to some of these early stage technologies. And the examples I give here would be the solar industry that we've been part of providing governments with financing support when, back in the day when solar was not as a commoditized cheap technology as it is today, to really improve the scale, which is an important factor in reducing the cost and mainstreaming these technologies. So you're very right, these are very important issues, and we are trying to address them on various fronts, from the research labs to the skill and education development, to testing them in the market with entrepreneurship and venture capital, as well as then scaling them up through concessional financing. Let me stop there.
Thank you, Rahul and Professor Pu, for being with us. So let's give a big hand to the speakers. Thank you. Rahul, now you may disconnect yourself or stay connected if you want. Now we will move on to session 2 on technology. We do not have a coffee break in between sessions because of time constraints. For those who need some break, please feel free to get some fresh air outside, but please do come back. Okay. Our first speaker is Dr. Ki-Jun Park, Chief Researcher of KEPCO Research Institute. He will introduce you to electric vehicle charging and vehicle-to-grid technology. Dr. Park, the floor is yours. You have 10 minutes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We'll introduce a little bit about the electric vehicle market, and then I'll discuss about vehicle grid integration technology, such as V1G and V2G. This is content of my talk. The electric vehicle produced 10 years ago, it only has a battery size of about 20 to 16 kilowatt hour. They can only run about 100 kilometers for one charge. But the vehicles produced this year and last year, equipped with more than 70 kilowatt of our battery, and they can run more than 400, 500 kilometers for one charge. It will increase up to 120 kilowatt or more in 2 or 3 years. The global EV sales increased rapidly from 3 million to 5 million last year, and 5 or 6 million this year, and it will be about 40 million in 2025. In 2040, the Bloomberg expects 80% of new car sales in the European Union will be electric vehicle. To meet the net zero at 2050, we have to change all the vehicles by sometime 2040 or 2045. This is well-known duck curve. It is projected about 7 or 8 years ago, and it is realized like the graph shown in right. It happens already in California. and it came to many countries. The Korean government set a goal to produce more renewables. In 2034, the PV and wind power will be about 70.5 gigawatt. In 10 years, in 2030, the renewable capacity that will be exceed more than 50% of the peak demand. So we are thinking about many fluctuation measures such as pumped hydro, battery ESS, and fast response resources such as electric vehicles. Meeting the demand and supply is the most important thing for the stable operation of a power system, the power grid. The fluctuating generation shown on the left has to meet the load curve shown on the right. The electric vehicle, batteries in the EV can support the fluctuation. This is actually happened in April this year at Jeju Island, Korea. On that day, the bright sun and the heavy wind, therefore the system operator ordered to curtail 100 megawatt of PV and wind generators from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. If we can move those EV charging demand of evening times to the daytime at your workplace, then we don't need to curtail all those renewables. Only 10,000 electric vehicles, which is about 2% of the registered vehicle in Jeju Island, they can support 100 megawatt capacity. This is typical charging curve shown on the left. If you plug in your charger into your vehicle, then the electric vehicle draw current constantly at 6 kilowatt or 7 kilowatt. If we connect the charger with the communication and the controllers, then we can control the level of charging, or we can stop the charging, or we can start the charging when we need. If the system is equipped with the bidirectional charging capability, then we can use that to support the peak demand, like a VTG. People worry about the additional degradation of their batteries if this is used for the VTG service daily. Suppose if we use our vehicle every weekdays for 10% of the storage capacity for 1 or 2 hours at the speed of 1/10 of the DC fast chargers, then that's about 2,607 charge and discharge for 10 years. In our experiment, only 1% of additional degradation will be occurred if we use such a service. The hardware is already arrived, shown in this graph, in these pictures. Beginning with the Hyundai Ioniq 5 that introduced April of this year, you can use your appliance of 220 volt by plugging into your vehicle. The Ioniq 5, EV6, Genesis, and Ford F-150 riding truck all have the 220 or 120 volt power consent, power outlet. So you can use up to 3.6 kilowatt or 9.6 kilowatt of energy from your vehicle. This is the component of a V2G system. The car were equipped with a bidirectional onboard charger, so-called V2G OBC, and the communication module to communicate with the chargers and the system. And the V2G charger were equipped with bidirectional metering and the communication module and the control modules. The V2G control system that will generate individual schedules to meet the departure time or target SOC set by the users or drivers. This is the summary of V2G use cases. The managed charging, we can control the level of charging or we can start and stop the charge, or you can use the vehicle as a backup power supply for your home, so-called V2X, or you can use your vehicle as a flexible resource for the power system, the V2G. In Korea, there are about 22,000 registered vehicles. If we use only 1% of vehicles that parked in your garage or parking lot, then that will be about 2 gigawatts of a very flexible resource that can replace the battery ESS or pumped hydro station. This is summary of economics of various flexible resources such as LNG picker, pumped hydro, battery ESS, and vehicle grid integration or V2G technology. If we construct a pumped hydro power stations, it will take a long time, like 7 years or 10 years, and you have to build your transmission lines like 154 kV or 345 kV lines. But if we put your charger on your garage or parking lot, it will take only a week or days to putting the charger. You only need to find out your parking space. And the cost is like 1/10 of all other technology. This is IEA study of capability of V2G potential for the variable renewable capacity. The 5% of EV will provide 600 gigawatt in 2030 for China, US, and EU, and India. From 2020, the KEPCO and KEPCO Research Institute doing a project on V1G smart charging demonstration. 61 vehicles of 8 branch offices KEPCO and 64 vehicles from individual customers are participating in this program. We are testing the VGI control system, user application for your smartphone, and the V1G, the charger, and our protocols. For V2G, we just started. From this month, November of this year, we are surveying the actual site. We accept the application from individual customers. So we will use Hyundai Ioniq 5 100 unit. We will install the 7 kilowatt AC chargers or 20 kilowatt DC chargers for the customers. And the Hyundai Ioniq 5 EV will be modified, the software, to accept the V2G capability. And we will test at actual environment. This is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Park. Please have a seat to your right and wait a little bit for Q&A session. Now, the next speaker is Mr. Dong-Hoon Lee, General Manager of Starkov. He will present on the innovative smart metering of electric vehicle charging. Mr. Lee, please.
Hello, audience. I'm Hoon from Starkov, and Starkov is a startup company in Korea, now scaling, involved in the energy sector, in particular EV charging sector. Here at Starkov, we are all about making EV charging convenient and accessible. We are very privileged, we feel very privileged to have this opportunity to talk about our experience and story about billing outlets. This is a very new concept, and how this technology was received and spread in Korea. So probably most of you never heard of this billing outlet technology, and you might wonder why you should be curious about this technology. So billing outlet did not exist in Korea before the year 2020. So there were 0 billing outlets by the end of last year. But as of now, end of 2021, there are 10,000 billing outlets in counts, which accounts for 10% market share of all public and non-public EV chargers. And the Korean government's fourth eco-friendly vehicle master plan published at the beginning of this year, aims to install 500,000 EV chargers by year 2025 with the help of billing outlets. So, and from zero in 2020, just last year, 16% of all public investments in EV chargers went to billing outlets this year by Ministry of Environment and municipal governments like Seoul or Daegu. So what was so different about billing outlets that was so well received by the government and spread so quickly? So this is the diagram. It's a little bit complex. Well, we have the billing outlet on the bottom center. Billing outlet is just nothing more than an electric outlet that also works as a smart meter, that also works as an advanced metering device. So, and it can read credit cards or RF signals to authenticate and invoice the user of the power meter. So, for some of you that know about the distribution market, it violates some of the common practices in the distribution market. So this device, operated by charge point operator, sends the metered value to charge point operator system, and the meter value is then transferred to distribution system operator, such as KEPCO. And billing outlets are mostly directly connected to the grid and work as a power meter / EV charger. And it can also be connected under an existing power meter in apartment complexes. And in that case, it becomes a child meter, and KEPCO deducts the usage of child meter from the parent meter. So because of that, it can be just connected to any existing distribution system and start operating as an EV charger. And just the diagram shows typical, left side is just typical service provided by charge point operators, but on the right side, that connection is something that's new. So we understand that it's new, but why did it spread so quickly in Korea? Well, for that, we need to understand a little bit what kind of issues the Korean market had prior to billing outlets. There were many market issues. And one of them is many repeated research show that EV drivers, rather than fast chargers, they actually prefer charging at their home or workplaces at much slower pace. So the problem with EV charger, the speed of the chargers in most cases is not the importance. The location of the chargers and the accessibility of the chargers is in most of the times important. And just the graph on the left is a report from McKinsey and other reports say the same thing. About 90 or more than 90% of EV charging happens at work or home with their private own proprietary chargers, and very few percentage of EV charging happens in public places. This was a problem for Korea in particular because almost 80% of housing supply in Korea are apartments, tall or lower. So residents cannot have a charger for himself or herself because the parking lot is shared with other residents. So while the demand for EV charging requests for easy to install and affordable private chargers, we could not have that many private chargers in Korea. That was one problem. But then why don't we just install a lot of public chargers? That can be the solution. The problem with public chargers is that is very costly, and in most of the times is just financially not viable. the left pie chart shows the frequency of usage of public chargers in Korea. Most of them are never touched, and some of them in very prime locations are frequently used. They can be operated profitable, but most of the times public chargers are not profitable. And on the right, it shows the cost and revenue structure, a return structure of L2 public chargers. And even after 5 years of operation, with assumption that there is a customer every day, you cannot, it is not profitable without the initial installation subsidy. So in most cases, the charge point operators, they receive installation subsidy at the beginning. That's how they get most of the money. And they don't really care about the operation because the operation doesn't produce a lot of returns. So we couldn't have a lot of private chargers, and then public chargers. It couldn't be sustainable without public investments. And then another issue is because they are so expensive, and because only selected number of parking spaces can have electric vehicle chargers, they wanted to make sure, the charge point operators wanted to make sure that those chargers are used, the parking slot is used for electric vehicles. So they started to paint the parking slots and make it designated slot for EV charging. And these numbers are actually from Canada. I couldn't find the research in Korea. 30% of non-EV drivers think it is unfair that EV drivers, they get to just have the prime parking slots. And so non-EV drivers, they don't like it. But EV drivers, they don't like it too because in most cases, people just suspend their EV charging. Many EV drivers experience that. And people don't move their car after they're finished charging. So people hog the charging space. And that pie chart on the right, that's research from University of Applied Sciences, Amsterdam. Only 5% of the time the parking slot, the designated parking slot, is used for EV charging, and 95% of the time is just empty or just a car parked there without charging the vehicle. And the numbers came from Canada, and you know that Canadians are the nicest, one of the nicest people on the planet. So you can imagine the frustration that EV owners and non-EV owners go through with this parking space issue. It affects not only these drivers, but also the charge point operator because it is harder for them to install and make return from these chargers. So billing outlets, they didn't exactly solve all of them, but it actually provided some solution to these problems because, let me go back here, because it takes away elements that are producing high costs in the initial operation. For instance, you don't need specific wiring for that EV charger because it requires less electricity. It can just be connected to any existing distribution system, and it can start operating. And you don't even need to ask for a power meter from the power company and make a panel, a distribution panel, and install it. The initial investment became a lot cheaper. And then, because it uses less electricity, the operating cost is actually cheaper because the power company actually charges the charge point operators based on the capacity of these chargers. So based off of this advantage in the lowered initial investment and operating costs, and with the help of the public support, it spread in Korea very rapidly this year, and that shows, on the left shows how these billing outlets are installed. It can just be placed on any existing lampposts or the walls of any buildings, and now there are 10,000 of these installed in Korea, and they can be very, it is easy to install them because the size of these chargers is significantly smaller. They take up 95% less space than typical L2 public chargers. Is about the size of a palm. And also, installation of EV chargers became more affordable. On the left, it shows how many chargers you can install with the same budget. With the same budget, you can install a DC fast charger. You can have 45 billing outlets. So the billing outlet solution to the parking slot issue is make every parking space an EV charging parking slot. So you just install a bunch of chargers at every corner of the parking lot. And even if you have a lot of chargers, the charging rate of these chargers are actually cheaper because they require less electrical capacity. And not only the charge point operators or the government legislators, that they can have more chargers with the same budget, the users actually benefit from lowered charging rate. And unlike, like I said, DC fast chargers or L2 public chargers, that could not be sustainable without public support, billing outlets can actually be profitable with just the operation alone. And this creates a sustainable business model in the EV charging sector. And also, as the EV penetration increases rapidly, we require a lot of EV chargers in existing buildings, and we started to care about the transformers and the existing distribution system in these buildings. And to install DC fast charger, you can only install 1 or 2 of these chargers in this very big apartment complex. But by lowering the capacity, we can have more than 300 units in average for these apartment buildings, just massively increasing the number of chargers we can have. At first, so billing outlets now is spreading very rapidly in Korea, but it did not go very well. It was not well received by the government in the beginning. It was actually first developed in the year 2017, and when we first brought it to KEPCO, they didn't want to recognize it as a power meter. It didn't comply with any of the common sense they had about power meters. Power meters are not supposed to discharge energy and sell the energy by itself. But in Korea, this is our way of receiving innovation into the market. We have a policy called regulatory sandbox, in which even if the technology doesn't make sense with the existing regulations, if the government thinks it has very high public benefit, then it permits the technology to be experimented and be commercialized. So in beginning of last year, the Ministry of Science, they allowed this technology to be experimented with the pilots with KEPCO, and by the end of last year, they decided that to include billing outlets in power meter standards, and now billing outlets are actual certified power meter in Korea. And after that, it escalated very quickly. January, the Ministry of Land and Housing, they obligated all new apartment buildings to have billing outlets with a number equivalent to 4% of all parking slots. And then the 4th eco-friendly vehicle master plan, including billing outlets to its plan to install 500 chargers by year 2025. And this year, the Ministry of Environment and municipal governments started allocating public funds for these billing outlets, which accelerated the speed for adoption. And recently, we have been in contact with the Open Charge Alliance in Europe and working with them to formalize and standardize this technology in accordance with other chargers. We believe billing outlets can help with smarter consumption of energy also. In terms of vehicle-to-grid discussions just before, because billing outlet is the power meter of charge station operator and distribution system operator at the same time, it eliminates some of the value chains within the vehicle-to-grid ecosystem. The problem with commercializing V2G is that it involves a lot of stakeholders, and by eliminating it, we expect it to spread a little bit quicker. And billing outlets, they actually know what kind of usage happened at the outlet. It can help with the power company knowing the usage and plan for BTM services. And we believe these issues is not local, and it is evident in other countries as well. For instance, fly line charging in Beijing, and it happens all across the world, in Korea, in India, and everywhere else, with these very highly populated cities with a very small number of charging space. And also, even in European cities, all these chargers are very small numbered and are left out of use because of the lack of business model that I explained before. As we see the forecast by IEA, the IEA actually forecasts that 2- and 3-wheelers are going to exceed the number, the penetration rate of other forms of electric vehicles. And we believe billing outlets can be a solution to this, these turn of events that will come in the future. And we hope this story was interesting and can help with some of the decarbonization in the transport sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. You may join Dr. Park and wait for a Q&A session. Mr. Lee, okay, yeah. And this wraps up our discussion on EV charging. Now let's invite the speakers on battery storage. Our next speaker is Dr. Jong-Seok Song, energy specialist of the World Bank. He will illustrate the World Bank's activities on deploying battery storage across the world. He's connected from Washington, D.C. Jong-Seok, over to you.
Thank you, Incheok, for the introduction. Hello, my name is Chong, and I'm working in SMAP, which is a multi-donor trust fund in the Energy and Extractives Practice Group of the World Bank. And I'm currently co-leading the SMAP Energy Storage Program. Today, I would like to talk about how the World Bank finances energy storage projects and its approach towards financing and supporting the knowledge activities around energy storage. So energy storage has been gaining a lot of buzz recently. Recently, in the COP26, in the COP26, we had the long energy storage council being announced, where actually 24 private sector firms had joined a coalition to basically promote long duration energy storage. And basically this is now starting to really pick up, where energy storage is now really being seen as the enabling technology to provide the system flexibility and the variability. System flexibility to address the variability that is being provided by wind and solar energy. And basically, energy storage is really well placed to basically support the decarbonization efforts of all our client countries, and it really helps in increasing the system flexibility to support the energy access agenda in the African and Asian continents through mini grids, and also helps reducing GHG emission by further integrating renewable energy in the system. The reason why battery storage is getting this attention is because of its modularity and because of its availability to be universally deployable in a lot of countries. Like, for example, in the case of pumped hydro, we do see a lot of pumped hydro plants only in locations where it is deployable and where we have the resources available. But battery storage is basically, you can just install it anywhere in the world, and basically it's provides containerized solutions, which is very easily deployable. However, the issue behind energy storage is that we still have this issue about the financing, where there is this financing viability gap that we have, especially because energy storage is actually very capex intensive, and this is actually one of the challenges that we face in actually helping the client countries scale up their renewable energy targets in the countries. Now, what we have done is that we had basically announced a 1 billion energy storage program that will actually mobilize another 1 billion US dollars in concessional financing, that is basically climate finance, and an additional 3 billion from DFIs and private financing, basically trying to catalyze a market of around 200 to up to 400 gigawatts of battery storage in developing countries. The reason behind this is because we would need that scale, and we would need to basically foster the market so that we can actually help the countries basically deploy and integrate the renewable energy that is essential for meeting the decarbonization targets and the net zero targets that are being announced by a lot of the countries. Currently, we have basically fundraised around 500 million through the climate investment funds and other climate finance facilities, and also we have received support from DFIs in basically supporting energy storage projects. And basically, we are actually continuing this efforts to work with other climate finance facilities and funds to promote and fundraise more funds for basically supporting energy storage programs. The program actually focuses on a couple of aspects which are really critical in basically scaling up energy storage in the client countries. What we are trying to do is we are trying to make sure that we have the right policies and regulations that are in place to make sure that we have the right incentive mechanisms for the batteries energy storage projects, and also trying to basically diversify the portfolio of energy storage projects to more environmentally sustainable technologies. Currently, we have most of the projects that are lithium-ion based, which are basically more focused on short duration technologies. But then, because of the different conditions that we have in our climate countries, where we have like harsh environmental conditions such as very hot temperatures, rising to 40, 50 degrees in some of the African countries, where basically we would need to find more environmentally sustainable technologies that would not require excessive cooling that basically lithium-ion technologies would need. So what we are also trying to support is we're trying to support firm power auctions. And for this, what we are doing is we're working in several countries to actually promote this approach, and also supporting large-scale demonstration projects and mini grids and distributed applications, which I will be talking about shortly afterwards. We are also starting to finance standalone batteries as a grid asset, which is something that is very complicated, because we would need the relevant policies and regulations in place, which again, we are working with the countries to basically define those policies and regulations to support standalone batteries for grid support to the power systems. Our program is actually mainly focused on two pillars. The first pillar is basically the investment support that we are providing to the task teams and the clients. And then the second pillar is basically the energy storage partnership, which is the knowledge pillar of the program, the energy storage program that we are working on, which will actually provide the best practices on energy storage related to policy, procurement, and enabling infrastructure, and basically trying to develop sustainable battery energy storage solutions for developing countries. Now, there is this strong complementarity between the battery storage investment plan and the energy storage partnership, where we actually have been working with the clients to learn from the different projects that have been already implemented to basically fine-tune the right approaches for future projects that are actually being defined in the pipeline. Currently, we have several projects that we are supporting in the World Bank. The most significant one of them is actually the ESCOM flagship project, which is co-financed by African Development Bank to support the South Africa's energy transition towards a cleaner mix. In this project, the best deployment is actually being implemented in phases to basically reach a target of 1,400 megawatt hours of energy storage capacity. This is basically to support the scale up of renewables through the IPP program, which is currently at a stage where there is a need for flexibility and there is a need for firm power. And currently, the first tender of the BESS of minimum 320 megawatts of usable capacity is actually being tendered out. And there is, in parallel, there is another program where the client has been issuing a tender where basically 2 gigawatts of generation needs to be filled up because of the supply and demand gap, where we actually saw a lot of clean energy plus battery storage hybrid projects that have been actually picked up during the tendering process and basically competed against other fossil fuel options to provide this firm power options that are needed for the grid. So we are actually seeing some developments, and we are actually seeing some positive news on energy storage deployment, even on the commercial on the commercial scale. Now, the second project that I would like to talk about is the Maldives project, which is actually one of the biggest projects that is financing a small island developing nation. It is actually a project which is around 100 million US dollars, which had been board approved in December of 2020, where this project actually supports different components such as risk mitigation mechanisms for solar PV and other innovative technologies such as floating solar, and also supports energy storage to basically support the integration of renewables in the system, and the energy storage has been identified as the least cost option, along with renewable energy in the Maldives, where the energy storage roadmap had been announced in the Climate Action Summit in 2019, where the ministry had endorsed the energy storage roadmap and basically announced it over there. Here, the key aspects of the project is to reduce the nation's dependence of diesel power generation, and basically reducing the fiscal burden of the country through reduced imports of fuel, but also to help the nation achieve its net zero commitments through the scale up of renewable energy and the battery storage solutions. And currently we are working with the client to identify the roadmap towards net zero commitment that the president of Maldives had committed last year in the Climate Ambition Summit. We have other projects such as in India, China, and even in Central African Republic, Gambia, where we actually have solar PV and battery storage hybrid projects, and also in Pacific Islands, where we see battery storage projects in Micronesia, Marshall Islands, and Tuvalu to support RE. We have also very recently have board approved projects in Burkina Faso, Tanzania, Ukraine, and ECOWAS, where we are actually seeing standalone best projects to support the grid in order to integrate renewable energy in the system, where Ukraine is actually financing battery storage, a standalone battery storage system to basically support frequency regulation in order to provide the right flexibility that is needed in order for the country to join the NTSOE grid. We are working with the 37 partners within the energy storage partnership and working on the different working groups where we are working to identify the right practices that are needed for a sustainable energy storage development in the client countries, where we are operating in different working groups such as test beds, flexible sector coupling, enabling policies and procurement frameworks, and even reuse and recycling of batteries. So we have actually produced several knowledge products, which includes a guideline for warranties for battery energy storage systems, and a guidance note on the environmental sustainability of lithium-ion battery energy storage systems, and looking into the reuse and recycling aspect of it. Here are some of the documents that have been produced, which I will skip at the moment due to time availability. And also what we are doing is we have been working with the clients to provide training support in the form of dedicated training programs that we have organized, where we have organized several training sessions with the clients to basically provides capacity building for different energy storage topics, and this has been done through the Energy Storage Academy, and currently we have already completed one series of training with 10 training sessions. And also what we're doing is we're working with the Moroccan, South African, and Indian clients to basically develop test beds in these countries to serve wider regional needs, and basically help the adoption of early stage battery storage technologies. We're also working in different aspects, capacity building aspects, where we are actually having a women in energy storage mentoring program with GWNet, where we have completed the first the cohort, and we are now starting the second cohort, where it would be great if we could actually have some mentors from Korea also, and this would really help the development of more what do you call mentees who can actually be more involved in energy storage, and we can actually foster more talent through that. We've also produced an energy storage sizing app, which actually provides a preliminary assessment of the energy storage sizing requirements, and this is available in the energies data.info of the SMAP, where you have the link available down here. We also have all the information that are available in the SMAP webpage, where we have all the publications and all the different activities that we have been working on in Energy Storage Partnership. And this is a LinkedIn page. I would like to stop my presentation here. Here are contacts if you are interested in working with us and collaborating with us through the Energy Storage Partnership and the Energy Storage Program. Thank you.
Thank you, Jong-seok. Please stay connected for Q&A session. Next speaker is Dr. Juno Shesta. She's a senior environmental specialist of the World Bank. She will discuss about the potential pollution concerns from battery. Over to you, Juno.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for this opportunity. After all those wonderful talks, I would like to touch upon potential pollution issues that may arise with increase in use of batteries in EV and beyond. So like all the speakers have said so far, energy demand is just going to increase, and with renewables like solar PV and wind covering about two-thirds of this need. So this indicates the need of energy storage systems, like other speakers have been mentioning. And in our emissions, with emissions increasing, especially in the EAP, what we have seen is transportation is the second largest source of energy emissions. And within transportation itself, road transportation contributes to over 60% of this emissions. So if we were to limit global warming at 1.5 per our 2030-2050 targets, we have to do something about road transportation emissions. There is a solution. Like you've heard, electric vehicles. Electric vehicles rely on lead-acid batteries. And this is not the only place where lead-acid batteries are used. It's in vehicles, also used in renewable energy storage systems, like I mentioned, and also backup power supplies for critical systems. So we know that with all the commitments and technology improvements, this demand for EV and lead-acid batteries are just going to increase. The market valuation forecasted for 2031 for lead-acid batteries is about 90 billion. And most of that demand comes from our East Asia Pacific region, China and Japan. So what happens to these batteries after they are used? They're mostly recycled or reused, which is good, right? But it also goes from really high-income countries, in most cases, to low-income countries, where there are not strict regulations or standards for recycling. Most of this recycling then ends up happening in backyards, in craft villages. So there is a consequence of that. So lead is then exposed to human beings and natural environment. There are different pathways of exposure. While recycling, if it's inhaled, lead particles are inhaled, so it gets exposure to humans through breathing. And also, if it ends up in soil particles, children playing in the soil can ingest and get sort of infected by it. And also, if we're growing vegetables or any crop in contaminated soil, it can get ingested. We can eat this food and get affected by lead pollution. So what happens to people when we eat contaminated, when we're exposed to lead? It has dire consequences, especially in children and in pregnant women. In children, there's a stark effect on mental development. Significant decrease in IQ levels in children that are exposed to lead. And in pregnant women, it can cause hypertension and also loss of pregnancy in some cases. In adults, it leads to cardiovascular diseases. So all serious conditions. When we're studying this issue in Vietnam and Laos, what we found out was there weren't as many studies specific to those countries, especially on blood lead levels, amount of exposure, and contamination level specific to Vietnam and Laos, which makes it very difficult to find remediation measures in these countries. So this exposure in these countries and beyond is not without any cost. For example, loss in IQ points, 1 point in IQ can cause 2% decline in lifetime income. And similarly, there's cost to mortality, of course, and morbidity as well. So using these sort of relationships, what we did was calculated cost of environmental health risk in Vietnam. We compared cost of different kinds of environmental degradation, climate change, lead pollution, ambient air pollution, water pollution, and others. And we were very surprised to see that lead pollution came second and actually higher than air pollution, which is very talked about in Vietnam. So next, in Laos PDR as well, we see that lead pollution, exposure to lead, causes significant impact on the GDP, 2.5%. So transitioning on to Korea, this is what's happening in the region and beyond. What is happening in Korea in terms of this pollution and EV batteries. And you have seen in the speakers just now that EV batteries, use of EV batteries have increased, and there is trend of EV batteries that's going to just increase, right? With the Green New Deal promising about 3 million units of electric vehicles in next couple decades. So, but Korea has a plan in place that we have seen in order to reduce is high reliance on imported resource, Korea has focused on recycling and reuse of these batteries. And there are two specific mandates that really highlights or pushes this sort of agenda: Clean Air Conservation Act and Notice on Returning Electric Vehicle Batteries. And also to note, there's a dedicated techno park in Jeju Island specified for lead batteries recycling. And there's standardization of it, and also known capacity for this recycling. That's not to say that there isn't room for improvement. Right now, only EV batteries are included, not plug-in batteries or hybrid batteries. So EPR system can be expanded to include all different types of batteries for recycling. And as the subsidies for these EV batteries decrease over time, there has to be more of policy measures to make sure that even after the subsidies decrease, these EV batteries are sent for recycling by the manufacturer and the users. And as you've seen, EV batteries are used throughout, there are different users and producers throughout the value chain. And those ministries and agencies involved need to work together to limit the pollution throughout the value chain. So finally, the way forward from looking at things from what's happening in other countries and Korea is there's a lot of knowledge to be shared and learned from Korea to other countries in the region. First and foremost, monitoring and reporting. There's a dire dearth of data on lead pollution, how much lead is there in soil in these countries, what is the exposure rate, what is the blood lead levels in these children and population communities. Next, there are lots of informal recycling centers in these countries, so how to formalize them without affecting the informal sector that rely on the jobs, making sure this just transition happens, and also legal sort of mandates and policies where maximum contaminant levels are set up for specific to the countries. And when we find out that there are sites that are contaminated, what are the remediation and management methods? Technology and financial support can help, and these are very costly measures where technical support as well as financial to these countries would be vital. And finally, public awareness. It is very surprising to know that, in countries like Vietnam, Laos, where lead pollution is very prevalent, very little is known about it. So there needs to be done more about education and public awareness about this lead pollution in general. So thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Juno.
I'm sure I kept it to the limit.
Yeah, thank you for keeping the time limit. Because we are behind the schedule, I will take only one question from the audience. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. Okay.
Okay. My name is Peter Jung from Thai. I have a question to Mr. Park from Capri. I'm very interested in the V2G service. As far as I know, the V2G service is not ready in Korea. I have two questions. Number one is when we can start the V2G service in Korea. Second is what is the last hurdle to move to commercialization? Thank you.
Okay. The first question is when it will be commercialized. I expect sometime 2024 because the standard is the most important thing for the vehicle manufacturers, because the vehicle manufactured in Korea that is sold in US and Europe and Korea and Japan and Indonesia. So they have to meet all the requirements and the regulations and things like that. And so we are doing the standard, making standard with the IEC and ISO, which is called the ISO 15118-20. That is in the stage of draft at the moment, and I expect that will be finalized sometime early next year. And after that, all the vehicle manufacturers will make their bidirectional onboard charger and the communication module with the specified standard, and the test and the registration, things will happen. It will take another year, so I expect the first the commercialized vehicle will came out sometime 2020 at the rate 2023 or 2024. That's my expectation. And the second question is the last hurdle. I think that the first thing is standard, and the second thing is how we make those chargers and the onboard charger cheaply. In other words, cost effectively. I think it will be viable in a few years, because the onboard charger, which is a standard for all the EVs, so you don't have the additional cost for that. And for the vehicle chargers, the only communication module has to be included with the previous model, so it will be done in a few years. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Dr. Park. Now we are wrapping up this Q&A session. Please give a big hand to the speakers. Thank you, Jong-seok, for being with us, even though it is a night time for you. Okay, now we will have the last session. Because of time constraints, I'm afraid that we cannot have a Q&A session for this last session. So we have 3 last presenters for this session. The first speaker is Professor Yong-hun Jung of Aju University. He will demonstrate a holistic view of hydrogen and carbon capture, utilization, and storage. Professor Jung, please.
Okay, thank you. I think, first of all, I would like to thank for the invitation to speak in this prestigious forum. And my name is Yong-hun Jung from Aju University, and there are many of my students sitting back there, so hi. Okay, and today I want to discuss about energy transition and climate, specifically hydrogen CCUS in Korea. Okay, before I go into my presentation, I hope that the World Bank would spend money the way they spend the time here, time management here. Allow more time for everybody, allow more money for everybody. I think that's the spirit, okay? All right. I think currently, technology has been an issue in G7 Summit and G20 Summit, and also UNFCCC. Currently, in a home stretch for the negotiation in Glasgow, UK. And I just accepted one phrase from the G7 Summit communique, which says we will focus on accelerating progress on electrification and batteries, hydrogen, carbon capture and storage, and blah, blah, blah. So hydrogen and carbon capture and storage, CCUS, are 2 most important technologies that the world is trying to develop and diffuse as soon as they can. I just want to put things in perspective, technology in perspective, where we are heading. We have been on a a long series of process, transition from a solid to liquid to gas, and our end point of this transition will be hydrogen. And some people used to ask me, why is it hydrogen? Because we have a lot of wind and solar. But come to think of it, wind and solar are also belonging to the hydrogen family because, wind and sunlight are coming from the explosion of hydrogen on the surface of the sun. So our end the journey of our transition endpoint will be hydrogen economy. Right? So ultimately, maybe year 2300, I'll be 300 years old at that time, and we will reach a hydrogen economy. But in this process, in this long journey, we have a lot of hurdles. We have to do a lot of things. We have to solve short-term and mid-term and long-term problems, such as climate change. So what we need is a technology, technology development. So I actually this is my diagram for educating my students, very, simple diagram which illustrate what are the major technologies which can contribute to combating climate change. I think there are three parts. One is the renewables, we have already discussed, and battery technologies, including hydrogen, and also CCUS. Because we need all these technologies because, these technologies, the speed and scale of development will ease the pain of the transition that we might encounter in our long process. So today's discussion will focus on this hydrogen and CCUS. Okay, I would not give already 5 minutes test, I'm sorry. So I would not really get into the technical details, but I want to highlight in this, this slide is that hydrogen can be produced in many different sources. Also, their application will be on many fronts. So hydrogen could be a very versatile fuel for future with very clean output. Okay, so what are the values and challenges? Hydrogen is the most abundant resource on Earth. So if we have a good technology, probably we will never run out of the energy sources. Also, it's carbon-free, and there's no residue pollution like nitrogen oxide. And also, we are currently commercializing hydrogen fuel cell technology, which is very immediate commercialization of the technology. So we have some market for these fuel cell technologies like fuel cell vehicles. Korea Hyundai Automobile Company is actually investing a lot of money in this hydrogen fuel based automobiles. But hydrogen is still a long shot in a sense, in terms of technology. So it has a very high cost of production, and technology is still not mature and very complicated in some cases. Also, the application technology, fuel cell vehicles are very expensive, and we do not have much infrastructure, and infrastructure itself is very expensive to build. So many Korean companies are very reluctant to make investment in advance for in the infrastructure construction. And also there are several problems like safety concerns. There's a kind of NIMBY the public acceptance problem, and also storage is problematic, and transportation is more problematic. So as a fuel, we have to solve all these problems in a row. Okay, in Korea, the hydrogen, I just pick up this one because I used to work in April for 10 years, and one of my former colleagues worked on this hydrogen case, and they actually made a cost comparison of all the economies in the APEC region with the differing technologies. And they discover, voila, Korea solar plus hydrogen is the most expensive in APEC region. meaning that we have a lot of things to do in future to commercialize this hydrogen technology. Okay, I wouldn't go into detail. Carbon capture, use and storage. This also has a very distinct advantage for Korea because Korea is heavily dependent on energy-intensive industries such as steel, cement, petrochemical. So from government point of view, I used to be the policymaker in the government, and from government point of view, the current sort of industrial structure is very important because they bring in value added. For example, petrochemicals have about 20% of our export. Korea is export dependent economy. So, without retooling or reforming the current industrial structure, government tried to find a way, to decarbonize the economy. So CCUS is a solution. Maybe it's a dream, but I think it could be an achievable dream, within maybe a few decades. Also, CCUS has values and challenges. As I mentioned, CCUS could be a painkiller or lubricant, or it can smooth out the Korea's grand energy transition. And also, it provides a platform for low carbon hydrogen production. Korea, in some cases, we are producing hydrogen through the petrochemical processing and also from electrolysis. But I think hydrogen could be a good industrial platform for the further economic growth. And also, the CCUS will provide a solution for sectors with hard to abate emissions like steel and cement, just as I mentioned. And also, these technologies, there is one variant of technologies, direct DAC, and this technology could actually absorb CO2 directly from the atmosphere, in case we really need to larger scale sort of absorption of CO2. In IPCC term, it's offshoots. If you have overshoot or offshoots from the CO2 targets, probably this kind of technology could be adopted in larger scale. And capture CO2 also has a use, like when you drink pops, like a Coca-Cola, you need CO2 to produce Coca-Cola, but it's not a large scale, so I didn't include. But like enhanced oil recovery or synthetic fuel, you can utilize CO2 as one of the substance, for this kind of product. Also, construction material. Currently, Hyundai Oil Bank is trying to manufacture construction material from the captured CO2. But just like any other technology, it is very high cost. The cost of capture is highest among all this, the process. And storage side is also resource dependent. You do not have large scale storage space unless you have a salt dome, just like in the state, or the caverns, natural caverns, or depleted oil and gas wells. So in Korea, we do not have any of these facilities except one small one in East Coast. There's a gas field, whether you believe it or not. We are producing some gas, okay. And also, CCUS, there's a lack of infrastructure of transportation. We have to transport CO2. But, if we run out of oil and gas, probably we can use the same pipeline, but, in this process, I think in this mid-course, you have to build new transportation infrastructure, which is very costly. And also, market for CO2 is location specific with a very high capital cost. So, still, most projects in Korea, projects in the world are in demonstration and pilot phases. I think currently they capture about 40 million tons worldwide a year, which is very small because we are emitting about 5.5 gigaton, 55 gigaton of CO2 every year. So it's a minuscule amount of sort of CO2s that we capture, store, and use. But I think probably we can easily double, quadruple, quintuple this amount with the development of technology. All right, I think there's a nexus between hydrogen and CCUS because in the meantime, the most sort of economical way to produce hydrogen is through SMR. With the methane reformation. So to make this yellow or sometimes gray, they call it gray hydrogen, which we get from fossil fuels. If we actually use the combination of this current economic hydrogen production technology with the CCS, probably we can reduce CO2 emissions. It's equivalent to green hydrogen. So this nexus between hydrogen and CCUS could be an interim technology, or combination, which can serve, while we decarbonize the world, we can still advance our technologies. All right, the CCUS in Korea, I wouldn't go into detail because there are, normally when I analyze any sort of technology, there are 4 aspects: policies, technology itself, and infrastructure and market. I think CCUS, there are a lot of policies announced, but it's all focused on technology development. And technology is also developed by the private sector as well as the utility companies. But because of side limitation, because of a sort of time frame, Korea is spending more money on the research and development rather than the diffusion and distribution. And infrastructure, CCUS is still in infancy. We do not have much, but there's one notable site. The KEPCO has coastal facilities nearby their power plants. And for CCUS, I think there will be a market, but I think this is closely linked to the current business of heavy industries like POSCO, steel company, and also Lotte Chemical, petrochemical company. These companies are trying to find a way to maintain current business without much sort of restructuring. That solution could be offered by CCUS technology. That's the promise that we believe CCUS technology could offer to Korea. So this is a roadmap. We have a roadmap, but I think there are a lot of roadblocks too, as well along the way. But government has a very clear vision on the roadmap. I just draw it a few days ago, and we have a quite sort of visibly conspicuous sort of roadmap. So maybe by year 2050, we may have some commercialization project completed in Korea in terms of CCUS. Hydrogen is more advanced than CCUS in Korea because there's a car manufacturer using this technology. Also, we have a very strong petrochemical industry. They actually as a byproduct, they produce hydrogens. So we have policies in place. And in Korea, when you develop any new technologies or any new industry, you touch upon the institutional sort of aspect first. So you put regulations, laws, and then all this institutional is put forward. And so policies are there, and also technology is actively researched in government labs as well as in private companies. And we are now trying to build some infrastructure like 5 hydrogen clusters around the peninsula, and they are mostly nearby renewable power sources. Like the one right north of this Gwangju city, there's a wind farms, and the green hydrogen could be produced in this area. Also, these 5 locations are very, industry specific, and they normally have, these locations have a heavy, highly energy intensive industries. We see that, we believe that there will be a market, by 2020, very mature market for hydrogen in Korea. And also, we are actually targeting global market because hydrogen will be a source of very important fuel replacing, maybe coal or further the oil as well. So this is Korea's roadmap. I cannot see very well because it's very far from here, the screen. But actually we have one thing I can say is that we have a very ambitious roadmap, So we'll have like a lot of cars, like 6.2 million cars a year by 2040. And then like charging stations, fueling stations, a lot of them nationwide. And then hydrogen power generation, and so on. So Korea has a very ambitious roadmap, and you can actually read this one, and you will see that this will be a very ambitious one. But I don't think it will be impossible to achieve. Korea has been known to achieve the impossibles in the history, so I believe that we will, achieve this hydrogen economy within the time frame that government has decided. And then I just include this figure that there's a different fiber clusters. These fiber clusters have different industries there. So some are producing gray hydrogen, others are producing green hydrogen. But all in all, in order to make, the scale economy, in order to make a sort of penetrate a kind of niche market, we are going to build fiber clusters and then make use of this hydrogen as the important fuels important fuel for decarbonizing the Korean energy system. All right, so implications. Net zero, everyone says net zero, and I was a negotiator, climate change negotiator for 25 years, and from my experience, negotiation will not, move as fast as we expect. Anyway, but the important thing is not the outcome of a negotiation, but the direction or ambitions they express during the negotiation are more important, directing the world. So I think for hydrogen CCUS economy in particular, it's a location specific, and we may need a holistic approach. And Korea, as I mentioned there, policy, market, technology, infrastructure, unless we make a holistic approach, probably we cannot make success on time, to decarbonize the Korean economy or meeting the net zero goals. Okay, so I mean, there are merits and demerits of technologies in Korea. Overall, Korea is making a big sort of the initial stride for the technology development. I think the world will watch us, how we develop the technology, infrastructure, and the market of these technologies. So even though these technologies are at a very early stage of development, but I think the time will come within maybe 1 or 2 decades that these technologies will be fully commercialized and materialized, you know, as a way towards, as an effective way towards the, you know, decarbonization of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Zhang. Now you are free to go back to your seats. Okay, next speaker is Mr. Sang-gi Jung, Managing Director of Tide. He will share his experience of deploying smart meters in Indonesia. We are way behind the schedule, so Mr. Zhang, if you squeeze your presentation into 5 or 6 minutes, it will be much appreciated. Yeah, it will contribute to energy saving and total carbon plate reduction of this forum. Thank you.
Okay. I will try to say the good morning, but good afternoon right now. Okay, my name is Peter Jung from Tide. Tide is one of the strong energy IoT solution company in Korea. We provide to AMI system to KEPCO. So today it is an honor to have a chance to present AMI cases for the power infrastructure's digitalization. Especially I want to explain about the Indonesia project. Okay, what is the AMI? Everybody knows the AMI is a smart metering. The AMI is the advanced metering infrastructure. The AMI is one of the essential factors for smart grid projects. So with AMI, we can collecting the real-time based energy consumption and quality data. And also with that, we can detect the loss and demand and response and another good information. As you can see, the AMI service structure, every house has a smart meter, and smart meter calculate the power consumption and power quality, and then send it to a server system. We can call MDMS, Meter Data Management System, which is controlled by normally utility company like KEPCO. So that data is delivered to server system through the communication modem and gateway and some another collecting server. Why AMI? A digital infrastructure of energy, the smart home, a smart building, a smart city, and smart nation. So monitoring the accurate the power consumption and quality data, we can check. And also demand and response, to minimize the blackout and peak demand control, and more accurate the forecasting of the energy consumption. And also this AMI is not only for smart metering. This is for electric vehicle, and then also renewable energy and microgrid project can be connected. And number 3 is the TOU, time of use based flexible tariff. What time band we are using, how much electricity. That's also very important. And number 4 is very important for Indonesia, loss detection and remote control. There is a around 10% loss in the field, then technical, non-technical loss. So they want to detect the loss in the field with AMI system. This is a smart grid project in Indonesia. There are 2 key projects, AMI, and second is the EV charging. The PLN is the utility company in Indonesia focusing on the AMI installation as a key project for transformation. And also they trying to has tested a variable technology for AMI. What is the best solution for their environment? And also second is the EV charging project. As you know, Indonesia is #1 nickel production country in the world. That they want to, and so many car makers, the Hyundai, Tesla, and other Japanese car makers come to Indonesia right now. So they think EV car can use in nighttime, either from the 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. The balanced power can be used for the EV car. That is good for energy efficiency and CO2 reduction. And Indonesia, there are so many customers, 79 million customers, that's 3 times bigger than Korea. And also they faced the big problems, 14 million smart meters right now not correct. So there are wrong billing. So so many customers complain about that. And also a major indicator, 2 points, is one is the loss, the other is the SID. The loss is around 9.5% per year, and 3 times bigger than KEPCO, and SID also around 100 times than KEPCO right now. And what is the benefit of the AMI in Indonesia? Not only for utility company, but also customer side. And cost benefit and reduce the loss, as I mentioned. And also higher power reliability, higher power quality. That's very important. And also, last one, increasing the customer satisfaction. So every customer can see with their smartphone how much it consumes the electricity at this moment. There are two AMI projects in Indonesia from the 2018 to 2020 AMI pilot project. And right now, the PLM Batam Island is very close to Singapore. They already started the AMI commercial project from 2021, this year. And also, Smart Power Infra AMI feasibility study in 2020, last year, KEPCO, Tide, and Indonesia Utility Company together we are doing. And I want to talk about the smart EV charging platform also. The AMI can be connected to the EV charging platform. Mr. Park from the Capri and also Starkov, General Manager already mentioned, this is very important. So with AMI data, we can service EV charging more smarter way. Because at the same place, we are using EV charging at the same time, a lot of EV energy we are using, then can be shut down. How to manage the power consumption? We can get data from the AMI and power consumption, and then we can manage the power, how much charge to EV electric vehicle. And right now, Indonesia also starting the EV charging pilot project in the highway area, and also they have their own EV charging platform, so interoperability test already started. And also for private sector, every shopping mall and commercial building, they will try to do the pilot projects from this year to next year. And then real commercial project can be started from end of next year or 2023, next year. This is the system for AMI system. We have 5 items, the equipment. First is the smart meter, and the second is the modem. So this is kind of the technology, communication technology. 3 major technology, and PLC power line communication, and radio frequency, and LTE mobile communication. And also DCU gateway and head-end system. And this is the last one is the MDMS. In Korea, MDMS is developed and operated and proven by KEPCO by themselves. And they're deployed around over 10 million AMI system in the field and managed for over 10 years. And MDMS, as you can see, there are a variety of the functions for advanced metering. You can see the dashboard and GIS-based power rod density. And for smart EV charging also, as I mentioned, the EV charger and EV charging management system and payment gateway is with AMI system. And street light also need the AMI system. Yeah, this is the, okay, I want to explain, this is the last page. The smart city total platform need AMI system as a backbone network. So EV charging and solar and energy smart metering and street light also need AMI system. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Zhang. You may go down to your seat. Thank you. Last but not least, Dr. Zaki Kuri, Senior Digital Development Specialist of World Bank, will guide you through the bumpy road of cyberattack in the power sector. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today we saw plenty of opportunities in order really to increase and accelerate the energy transition. But in the same time, yesterday, Dr. Angela already presented to us the World Energy Council survey, the results of this survey, and among the two top priorities that are really the concerns for energy leaders, one of them is cyber risk. Today, I would like really to follow the same pattern like the opportunities that we have. It is time really to recognize that there is risk that is coming with such kind of opportunities that we need to address altogether. But let me first please define what do we mean by cybersecurity. A lot of us are thinking about it as just a technology matter, but it's more than just a technology matter. It's really about the ecosystem that we are having and how really, especially with the acceleration of digital transformation of this viable sector, with also the availability of critical infrastructure, we really need to look at the full ecosystem as a whole. How the risk is delivered, that's something that we are seeing more and more in terms of cyber attacks, or even in some of the energy, let's say, supply companies. Recently, we are seeing a lot of ransom that are coming, but also even on the privacy of every single consumers, it is also an issue that needs to be addressed. So, why it is really the concern of energy leaders in 2021, and it will continue for a while, especially after, let's say, COVID presented to us an opportunity for digital acceleration, digital transformation acceleration, and the transition of the sector as a whole. Really, we are seeing not only on the IT level, which is the information technology, but also on the OT level, which is the operational side of the energy supply and production here. We are seeing at least seven times in just a couple of years, 7 times increase in the ransom within specifically the energy sector. And I'm talking here, I'm referring to the electricity supply companies. I'm seeing also with more digital transformation and the use of IoT, Internet of Things, we are seeing a 6-fold increase in the IoT attacks. But this is also is costing not only just the reputation of the companies, the disruption of the provision and the supply of the energy, but it is also financially can be translated into $1 trillion of costs that brought us in 2020. No one is exempt from this risk, and this is a global phenomenon that will increase. It's not stopping there. And we are seeing it in Korea, we are seeing it in the US, but we are seeing also it in the Middle East, in Africa. So it's not about really a division between developing and developed countries. It's not about low income and high income countries. It's really about the phenomenon of transformation and the requirement for balance between opportunities and risks there. I'm just showing to you 2 recent very real cases here, the case of South Africa and Ukraine that happened, but you know quite well that at least within the last 9 months, there was 9 cases that happened in the energy sector in the US alone. So, in simple terms, cybersecurity is not just a technology issue. It's not about the technology per se. It is a business issue for the energy sector. It is really affecting the trust with the consumers. It is really affecting, let's say, the privacy of these consumers, but also it is disrupting the continuity of supply within the system and making it less efficient, which is stopping decision leaders from moving forward with the transition plan. In order really to shift it to the process itself, how we can address cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is basically the best way is to approach it from an ecosystem approach, which means looking at the full value chain of the energy sector. It's not just in the production side. It's not about just the end of the value chain in terms of the end point for the consumers. But it is taking us through the different milestones, or at least the stops from the first mile until the end mile, passing by the different stages that we are looking at. Energy is exactly like any other sectors that has such kind of value chain. So the devices, the infrastructure, the processes, those are the areas where there is entry points for such kind of risks that are making us vulnerable there. It's not also limited to any specific type of energy that we are talking. While we are focusing, or I'm giving some examples about the electricity sector, but it's also coming in order really to be focusing on certain areas more and more where vulnerability are, or even in the backbone infrastructure like the data centers and the cloud storage that we are more and more relying like what we are basically saw from previous presenters here. I want just to leave you with three messages here, giving the time that I'm having and optimization. I hate to be the one separating you from lunch. So let's go quickly to our conclusion. There are, the first point is that this is not something that will fade away. It will continue to be on the rise. And we are seeing more and more out of it, and it will continue to be the case, but more sophisticated. So this needs to be organized within the boardroom before moving into the IT sector. It is also needs to be within the different layers of management, because there are some decisions that will affect every single part of the vulnerability side during the value chain. There is also another message, which is it is possible to increase the resilience within the networks and the grids, and also the full critical infrastructure side. However, this will need some preparation, which means that not only in terms of the human capital and the talents that each one of the companies do have and can really increase, but on the agility itself of how we are transforming the skills that we are having within these companies in order really to be, I would say, more out of the box in terms of defending the integrated system of the whole supply and production side. And finally, it needs to be on top of the priorities, if not the top, at least it will be among the 3 top priorities of any board, let's say, decision from now until at least the 2025 for the time being, until we train the muscle so it can come natural and normal to defend our resilience and increase the efficiency within the process. I will only have very quick overview about the World Bank. Where are we coming from, or what is really the contribution here? It's beyond the technology side. We are focusing on 3 areas, either on the operation by helping our client countries in order really to address some of the interventions to increase the resilience, or just sharing more knowledge about some of the analysis that happened, or even building some evidence of what can happen in terms of forecasting. Where are really the fragility within the system that we're having, working with our industry leads in order really to push this momentum for the transition of the sector, but also the digital transformation of the whole energy sector. And finally, in terms of partnership, we're really delighted and proud to work very closely with KISA here, and in the same time the different institutions provided the Korean expertise, but also globally we do have our network of not only official agency, but we rely a lot on the academia in order really to feed into our R&D part of the knowledge. I hope that this gives you a hint of where, let's say, this or why this is a priority, and you better understand that the elements of the risk. It's not enough in 10 minutes to address it, but I will be willing in order really to take after that the dialogue into the next level. Thank you very much, and this is time, I guess, for lunch here.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you for your powerful, passionate final presentation. So please give a big round of applause to our speakers, Professor Chung, Mr. Chung, and Jackie. Okay, now I'll give the floor to Dr. Hyung-gun Wang, Program Manager of Korea Green Growth Trust Fund, for his closing remarks. He's connected online from Washington, D.C. Over to you, Hyung-gun.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much for kind introduction. Yeah, as you introduced to me, my name is Hyung-gun Wang. I'm the Program Manager of Korea Green Growth Trust Fund at the World Bank. It's a great honor to attend the BIXPO World Bank Energy Forum virtually from Washington, D.C. today, and hear about the clean energy transition from renowned experts in Korea and the World Bank. I hope I can travel and attend next year's BIXPO Energy Forum in person in Korea. Regarding KGTF, KGTF is a Korea Green Growth Trust Fund. It's a partnership agreement between the Korean government and the World Bank senior management in 2011 to promote green growth and sustainable development in World Bank client countries. With more than 8 years of green growth project experience and lessons learned, and the only trust fund program at the World Bank devoted to the green growth and supporting 7 key green growth sectors, including energy, KGHF has provided grant support to 180 World Bank projects, a total of $98 million, and leveraged more than $15 billion of World Bank lending and co-finance. Today, we hear about green energy transition in East Asia and Korea, and also various field-proven frontier technologies for energy transition. I think we had a very productive discussion today, listened to the promising innovations and policy actions for clean energy transition and carbon neutrality, but also warned of huge challenges at all fronts to overcome. To address global or country-specific challenges, all stakeholders, including government, public agencies, private companies, citizens and academics should work together to develop comprehensive policies for clean, just, and sustainable transition, advance and commercialize clean energy technologies, and mobilize public-private finance. In summary, I think we need to work together and share knowledge, innovations, and best practices to make a clean energy transition financially viable, mobilize climate finance at a significant scale, and ensure a just transition for all. I think it is the main take-home message of today's forum at the BIXPO today. Thank you so much. Inchol, over to you.
Thank you, Hyung-gun. This is very late night for you. I really thank you for your kind remarks and sustainable support for Korean partnership. Okay, everyone. I really thank you all for your prolonged participation, both offline and online. So this is the end of the forum. See you next year. Thank you. And there's real true closing of this forum. We will take photo session. So